Bro, you won't believe what NBC just pulled on Donald Trump's post-arrest speech. The world was waiting to see what Donald Trump was going to say after his 34 felony count arraignment. And as with the rest of the world, I decided to tune in to YouTube because after all, I make YouTube videos to listen to what Trump was saying. So while it was playing, right before having dinner with my family, I'm listening to it, and then all of a sudden, NBC decides, you know what, we're just not going to play it anymore. Listen to what NBC has to say, then I'm going to give you my thoughts and my reaction on what Donald Trump had to say. But this was mind-blowing. Democratic left-leaning just cut away from Donald Trump's speech post-arraignment. Here we go.
Mar-a-Lago from our beautiful White House, just as virtually every other president has done in the past.
Okay, we've been listening into the former president as he makes remarks at Mar-a-Lago. We initially took this event thinking he was going to talk about the indictment today, being charged with 34 felony counts in Manhattan. It has turned into a speech of a list of grievances and, of course, some falsehoods. The notes I have made so far talking about an unconstitutional search at Mar-a-Lago for those documents, which was not true, and a lot of election mistruths about what happened to him in the 2020 election.
It feels like a speech that he would deliver at a campaign rally,
Right.
Largely because that is the vibe of what we're seeing here at Mar-a-Lago. The grievances that he aired that we have heard before again and again, rehashing some of these election conspiracy theory lies, and then moving on to these attacks against Alvin Bragg and talking about how he says everybody who looked at this case says there's no crime and it should never have been brought. That is clearly not the case. The Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg thinks there is a case here. That is why he has brought this. He is referencing, it sounds like, some of his allies on Capitol Hill and elsewhere in the party who are backing him up to say that this is, in their view, political persecution of a current presidential candidate. It's an opportunity really here for Donald Trump to make his case as to, as we talked about right at the start of this, why he pleaded not guilty today. We so far have not heard that case, as he has made the turn now to other investigations in front of him, including, of course, that special counsel investigation on classified documents.
Yeah, we also want to let you know, the viewers at home, that if he starts to talk about this case once again, we will dip back in. But as Hallie mentioned, it sort of turned into a campaign speech. And again, a lot of falsehoods coming out from the former president. I do want to bring it.
So I'm going to go ahead and just jump in here and say, so what? Let him say what he wants. But America wanted to see what he had to say because he didn't speak at the courthouse before, as he was scheduled to, per the mainstream media. He didn't speak after the arraignment, as the mainstream media told us they were confident that he would. So we spent much of the day sitting around waiting for Donald Trump to make a statement. Now he goes and makes a statement, and NBC decides, you know what? We don't want to air Donald Trump's campaign, so we're just going to cut away from it. Why not let the user decide to do that? Is there really that much else to cover? No, of course not, because then they go right into talking heads commentary on it. Now, I'm going to make some commentary of my own, and I hope that my opinion is shared by many of you, though I know it won't please everybody. But at the very least, I'm willing to share what my opinion is and then listen to your feedback in the comments below. So, first things first, I think Donald Trump would really, maybe this is an unpopular opinion, but I think Donald Trump would really benefit from no longer talking about the election fraud stuff. I think it's a bad look. I think it makes him look like a sore loser. I think he needs to just put his pants on and say the pants is the past is the past, and let that be. Now, we all understand there were frustrations around the 2020 election on both sides. But Donald Trump, how many times has it been investigated and declared that the suitcases of ballots that you're talking about were used as official locked cases to put ballots away for the night so they could count them again in the morning, right? Look, we could debate this all day long. The argument here, though, whether there were shenanigans or not, isn't what the point is. The point is, we have bigger things to talk about, bro. If you want to run for 24, run for 24. Let's talk about what matters. And that should be the first thing that Donald Trump talks about. More people agree that this indictment is weak. Even Democrats agree that the indictment is weak. One of my favorite publications is The Economist. They are a phenomenal economic magazine. They hate Trump's guts. When I go on runs and I audio their podcast, I laugh at how angry they get when they talk about Trump. And that's okay. I still listen to them, even though they don't necessarily have to align with everything I believe, because they share perspective. But what they said was a very interesting argument. They said, bringing an indictment against Donald Trump that is not a bulletproof indictment, that is some kind of half-a strung together indictment against Donald Trump, would be a massive mistake, because it's not going to give, it's not going to stick, so it's not going to give Democrats the satisfaction they're looking for. And on top of that, it's just going to lead to more distrust by Republicans in the judicial system. And that is a mistake. In fact, the actual article was titled, "Prosecuting Donald Trump in the Stormy Daniels Case Looks Like a Mistake. The case is too uncertain and technical to deliver the clarity America needs." And they essentially talk about how, look, if the only thing you've got is this potential elevation of falsifying business documents from a misdemeanor, all from one case, Stormy Daniels, people are talking about this $30,000 to the doorman, no charges against that. People are talking about the $150,000 to Karen McDougal, who, by the way, sued Tucker Carlson because she thought Tucker Carlson defamed her when Tucker Carlson went on to suggest that she was actually somebody who was extorting Donald Trump. She had her case dismissed, in fairness, it's worth noting, by a Donald Trump appointee. Obviously, Stormy Daniels has also had to pay fees to Donald Trump for suing Donald Trump for slander and libel in cases that have essentially fallen flat. Now, that's not to say that what they're alleging, the sexual affair, didn't happen. But the point is, the Karen McDougal, the Playboy actress or model, and this hotel door person, no charges from those. Just charges from the Donald related to Stormy Daniels. Those were the 11 instances of invoice and check and journal entry were amplified 3 times each for 33 felony counts plus a duplicate entry, so therefore 34 counts of fraud. It's a pretty weak case to then argue that because there were potentially falsified business records, that violated New York election code, not federal election code, which that case was already decided not to be prosecuted by federal election officials, but the New York state election officials, along with the Manhattan DA, suggest, well, maybe that was not kosher to Manhattan, or I should I say New York law. That now elevates this whole 34 count set to the lowest level of misdemeanor in New York, when 50% of felonies in New York get downgraded to misdemeanors. And then even after a 50% downgrade, only another 50% actually get prosecuted and are won cases by the district attorney, which means 75% of felony cases in New York go unconvicted. The odds look good for Trump. But what it actually does, and I'll tell you, the Economist is right here. The Economist is saying, if Trump is to be prosecuted, it should be for something that cannot be dismissed as a technicality and where the law is clearer. The Manhattan DA's case looks like a mistake. This is straight from The Economist. And that's incredible to hear from a left-leaning publication that actually really dislikes Trump. So, with that said, what is my reaction to Donald Trump and what he actually said in his speech? Well, once we remove the Russia, the raid on Mar-a-Lago, we talk about the election fraud in 2020, once we get through all of that, I think Donald Trump actually hits on some things that he should be hitting on. The problem is he really saves that for the end of his speech. I think that should be the priority of his speech, and that's just my opinion. But he appropriately focuses on the potential for World War III, which is a real concern for people. Financial analysts interviewed suggest that they are concerned to the tune of about 15%, mostly, that we are most at risk of some kind of massive conflict with Russia, so evolving geopolitical risks. About 14% risks from China. About 20% are worried about risks from the debt ceiling. And then others have lingering fears over what could be sticky inflation. Those are core issues that we should be talking about. Also, the devaluing of the dollar, the debt ceiling. What about, if I didn't already mention the debt ceiling, what about oil security and reducing gas prices? Those are things that should be at the forefront of what Donald Trump talks about. So, if I had any advice for Donald Trump, it would be very simple. Stop talking about the past. Start your speech with a very simple, this case should be dismissed. You got a lot of applause on that one. Then go right into, look, we all know this has been nothing other than a witch hunt. But let's talk about the future because we want solutions, right? Right, and get cheers, whatever, applause, and then go into the lines that Donald Trump had. Some of them I think are a little extreme, like this country's going to hell, all-out nuclear World War III, and Russia is now joining with China, Saudi Arabia has joined with Iran. Those are actually great arguments right there. Those are true. Russia and China are trading oil and weapons and lethal weapons, not just less lethal or non-lethal weapons. Saudi Arabia hated Iran, but now that America has left a political vacuum and a military vacuum in the Middle East, Saudi Arabia is like, well, I guess I may as well make friends with the friend of my enemy, the enemy of Saudi Arabia being the Houthis, who continue to attack them, and Iran continues to supply the Houthis. But now that Saudi Arabia and Iran in this weird twisted love triangle are friends, Iran is sending less weapons to the third wheel, the Houthis. Those are the things that people care about today. What about war with Taiwan or trade restrictions and inflation? Let's get the past out and let's talk about the future. That's my advice to Trump. My advice to NBC is don't censor. That is a bad look, and that's exactly why people stop viewing your kind of channels.